Rome had prevailed. The legions returned, and with them came something history books prefer not to describe. Picture it for a moment. You are standing on a dust-choked road in the year 70 AD. In the distance, a triumphal column advances toward the eternal city. Banners ripple in the breeze. Armor flashes beneath the sun. Soldiers march in flawless formation, and among them, bound together by iron chains, are hundreds of women with hollow eyes. Women who already understand that death would have been mercy compared to what awaits them. This is an account of what followed Roman conquest, of what happened when the legions took a city, of the fate reserved for female prisoners of war, of practices that transformed military victory into something far darker than simple territorial control. What you are about to hear is not imagination. It is preserved in generals' letters, in the writings of ancient historians, in legal proceedings that have survived nearly 2,000 years. And yet, it has been carefully excluded from school curricula and major cinematic portrayals because some truths are too unsettling to be taught openly. Before we continue into this history deliberately forgotten, support this channel dedicated to uncovering the past as it truly was. Subscribe and leave a like. It is a small gesture, but it allows us to keep revealing what power worked so hard to erase. We are taught about Rome's glory, about invincible legions that conquered the known world, about victorious generals returning home, parading along the Via Sacra as crowds erupted in celebration, about prisoners of war displayed as living proof of imperial dominance. The official story is straightforward. The captives became slaves. They were sent to mines, to farms, to the homes of wealthy patricians. A brutal fate, certainly, but one presented as a normal consequence of ancient warfare. This is the version that endures. Clean, orderly, but the surviving documents tell another story. According to a military report preserved in the British Museum, dating to the reign of Trajan, after the Roman conquest of Dacia in 106 AD, approximately 15,000 women were taken captive. The official record mentions only their distribution among the legions and their subsequent transfer to the provinces. Distribution, a word so administrative, so bloodless, until personal accounts are read, letters written home, private diaries discovered in abandoned forts, notes never intended for history. Then that word begins to mean something else entirely, because what happened to these women before they ever became domestic slaves was a ritual of systematic humiliation, a celebration of victory carved into the bodies of the defeated, a political act masked as battlefield brutality. But can it even be called brutality when it was calculated, organized, and approved by the Roman state itself? When a city fell, there was a sequence, not chaos procedure. First, men of fighting age were separated. Some were executed immediately. Others were spared for the arena. Children and the elderly were deemed useless, abandoned, left behind, or eliminated depending on logistical necessity. Then came the women. Young women formed the third category. They were treated differently. They were assembled in the central square of the conquered city, stripped and exposed beneath the sun and the gaze of the entire legion. They remained there for hours, sometimes days, while officers conducted their selections. The most physically attractive were marked with red dye on the left shoulder and set aside for commanders. The remainder were allocated to rank and file soldiers. There was even a formal Latin designation for this process: Praeda Bellica Feminarum, female war spoils. The term appears in military manuals, in official correspondence. Yes, taxes were levied on this property. A fragment of a letter discovered in Pompeii, written by a legionary named Marcus Flavius during the campaign in Germania, describes the scene with unsettling detachment. I took 3 for myself on the first night. The youngest cried without stopping. The second tried to bite. The third simply stared at nothing, as if she were already gone. I preferred the third. She was easier. That word, easier, echoes across centuries because it exposes something fundamental about this violence. It was not driven solely by desire. It was about domination, about erasing dignity before erasing identity, about converting human beings into objects before formally enslaving them. Roman generals understood the political purpose of this ritual with absolute clarity. This was not about allowing soldiers to release tension after long campaigns. It was a demonstration of total power. a message delivered without ambiguity to any population that considered resistance. This is what happens to your daughters, your sisters, your wives, and the message was effective. The Roman historian Tacitus wrote of the revolt led by Boudica in Britain in 60 AD. He records that Boudica herself and her daughters were publicly violated by Roman officers after their capture, not as personal punishment, but as a calculated example meant to establish imperial authority. The warrior queen who dared to defy Rome was reduced to spectacle. Her daughters, princesses by birth, were transformed into instruments of instruction. When Boudica later rallied her forces again, she was not fighting merely for land. She fought for something far older and far more visceral. For revenge that could never truly be satisfied, for dignity that could never be restored, for screams forced into silence. She was defeated, and what became of the women of her tribe after the final suppression was never fully recorded. We know only this: Britannia did not rebel again for 3 centuries. Is silence always evidence of peace? Or is it sometimes the result of terror so complete that even speech is taken away? But this was only the beginning. After the first days, after the ritual of domination, came the bureaucratic phase. The conversion of people into property. This was the next phase. The transformation of human beings into property. The survivors were branded, literally. Hot irons pressed into flesh, burning symbols that identified the legion that captured them, and the specific campaign in which they were taken. Marks of ownership carved into skin, often on the face, so their condition could never be concealed. Then came transport. Chained together in groups of 10 or 20, they were forced to march hundreds of kilometers toward the ports. There, they waited in dark, damp warehouses. The same buildings used to store grain and olive oil until enough ships were available. They were stored. A commercial inventory preserved in Alexandria, dated to 115 AD, records the mixed cargo of a merchant vessel, 340 amphorae of wine, 120 barrels of wheat, 89 women from Judea, 14 Berber horses, women listed alongside wine and horses, same ledger, same accounting category, same logistical value. The sea crossing lasted weeks. They were kept below deck, chained in rows, with barely enough space to sit upright, no room to lie flat. Daily rations were calculated precisely to keep them alive, nothing more. Many died during the journey, disease, dehydration, or simply surrender. The bodies were thrown into the sea without ritual or record. There exists an economic calculation preserved in a Roman treatise on estate management, written in the 1st century by Columella. He estimated that an acceptable loss rate during the transport of female war captives was between 20 and 30%. Acceptable, as though discussing spoiled produce. When they finally arrived in Rome or other major cities of the empire, the next stage began. The auctions, specialized markets where wealthy buyers inspected human merchandise as one would inspect livestock, hands probing flesh, teeth examined, mouths forced open, signs of illness, injury, or pregnancy carefully checked. The youngest and most physically desirable commanded enormous prices. They were purchased by patricians, by elite brothels, by temples that offered specialized services to devotees of certain Eastern cults. The rest, the women whose appearance had deteriorated during the journey, those marked by too many scars, those who resisted, those who had broken mentally, were sold in bulk. Mines, farms, workshops. In those places, life expectancy rarely exceeded 5 years, but there was a fate considered worse than the mines: the brothels. Specialized establishments that operated openly in every Roman city, legal, regulated, taxed. The Roman state profited from every transaction, and female prisoners of war were the most sought-after commodity. Why? Because they were foreign, because they came from defeated peoples, because violating the daughter of an enemy offered ordinary Roman citizens a sense of participation in imperial conquest. A man who had never carried a shield or drawn a sword could, for a few coins, feel like a victor, a conqueror by proxy. A piece of graffiti found in Pompeii, scratched onto the wall of a brothel, reads simply, "Here I penetrated a Briton." Rome was eternal. Even the most intimate act was transformed into a political declaration. The women in these places had no names. They were identified only by origin: the Gaul, the German, the Jewess. They worked in cubicles smaller than 2 square meters, no windows. A single curtain as a door. They serviced between 10 and 20 men per day. There was no retirement, no release, no exit. Many turned to suicide. Others lost their sanity completely. A very small number survived long enough to be freed, but even freedom did not erase what had been done. The brand on the face remained. The memory in the body remained. In the 2nd century, a Roman physician named Soranus of Ephesus wrote a treatise on gynecology. One chapter addressed illnesses common among women used in war prostitution. He described chronic inflammation, premature infertility, recurring hemorrhages. Then he added, almost as a passing remark, brothel owners are advised to renew their stock every 3 or 4 years, as after this period, the merchandise loses commercial value and productive capacity. Renew the stock, as one might replace broken jars. And all of this entire industrial system of dehumanization functioned openly. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was denied. There was no shame. It was simply considered the natural order of things, the logical outcome of military victory. Rome won, and the defeated paid with everything they were and everything they might have become. The question lingers, how much of this calculated coldness still survives in modern wars, merely under different names? Behind that wall of historical silence lies something even darker. There are almost no first-person accounts. The victims themselves left no written testimony. They could not write the language of their conquerors. They had no access to materials. And even if they had, who would have recorded their words? Yet, there are rare exceptions. Disturbing. In the 2nd century, a woman named Blandina appears in early Christian writings. She was a slave, originally captured during a campaign in Gaul. While serving in a Roman household, she converted to Christianity. When her faith was discovered and she was arrested, she spoke during interrogation about her past. One surviving fragment records her words, "They asked if I feared death. I told them I had already died many times. They killed me the night my village burned. They killed me on the march to the sea. They killed me in the ship's hold. They killed me the first time a Roman man called me property." Death before the lions would only confirm what was already true. Blandina was executed in the arena, but her words endured. They reveal something essential. The trauma was not only physical, it was existential. The destruction was not merely of the body, but of the very idea of being human. These women were forced to learn a terrible truth, that dignity, identity, and human worth are not fixed, that they are conventions, revocable in an instant when force disappears. As long as Rome prevailed, that convention stood. When Rome conquered, it ended, and once broken, it could never be rebuilt. Even when freed, even when escaped, even decades later, the fracture remained, because the revelation could not be unlearned. You are human only as long as someone stronger allows you to be. Another document from the 2nd century records a rebellion of enslaved women in a rural settlement in Spain. They killed the owner and his family in the middle of the night. When they were captured, the leader, a Germanic woman identified in the records only as the red-haired one, was brought before a judge prior to execution. She spoke only once. "You taught us that the world belongs to the violent," she said. "We only practiced the lesson." She was crucified alongside 17 others, but the sentence endured because it exposed the central hypocrisy of the entire system. Rome saw itself as civilization. It believed it brought order, law, and structure to a barbaric world, that it replaced chaos with discipline, that it elevated humanity through conquest. But that civilization was constructed on systematic violence, on the calculated exploitation of the bodies and inner lives of the defeated. And when the defeated turned that same logic of violence back upon Rome, they were no longer considered participants in the natural order. They were criminals. A Roman historian, writing centuries later, recorded a moment that quietly revealed this contradiction. Ammianus Marcellinus, writing in the 5th century, described events during the invasions of the Huns' incursions that would ultimately help fracture the Roman Empire itself. He noted something unsettling. Some Roman women taken captive during these invasions appeared strangely resigned to their fate, not hysterical, not defiant, resigned, as if they recognized in what was happening to them a distant echo of something their own ancestors had once inflicted upon others. History folding inward on itself. Rome harvesting what it had sown over centuries of conquest. But this recognition redeemed no one. It did not spare those Roman women from suffering. It did not lessen the horror awaiting them. It merely revealed a nauseating truth. Human beings possess an almost limitless capacity to turn the pain of others into system, into tradition, into routine, into something that feels normal. And when one system collapses, another is already waiting beneath it. The machinery changes hands. The logic remains. So the question emerges: have we truly evolved, or have we merely changed the clothing of the same cruelty? History books rarely dedicate more than a paragraph to the fate of prisoners of war in antiquity. And when women are mentioned at all, the language becomes deliberately vague. Enslaved, exploited. But this careful silence exists for a reason. As the Italian historian Carlo Ginzburg once observed, the boundary between the sacred and the profane is thin and almost always drawn by power. Rome became the civilizational template for the Western world. Its legal framework shaped modern systems of law. Its military organization informed contemporary armies. Its architecture is still copied in capitals across the globe. To fully confront the systematic nature of Roman sexual violence would require questioning the foundations of this admiration. It would require acknowledging that civilization carries a cost, and that this cost is almost always paid by the most vulnerable. So instead, we choose elegance. We choose silence. We focus on aqueducts, on roads, on laws. We celebrate Julius Caesar as a brilliant military mind, while forgetting that his campaigns in Gaul resulted in the enslavement of hundreds of thousands of women and children. We watch films in which gladiators fight heroically for freedom, yet we never see what existed just beyond the arena walls. We never see the brothels beside the Colosseum. We never see the lines of men waiting their turn with newly arrived captives, because that would be uncomfortable. And discomfort is precisely what history demands. There is a tombstone in a museum in London, dated to the 2nd century. It was found near what was once a Roman fort in Britain. The inscription is brief. Here once was a woman, her name forgotten, her homeland forgotten. May the gods show her more mercy than Rome did. No name, no story, only an anonymous acknowledgement of suffering too heavy to describe. How many others were there? Millions. Across 6 centuries of imperial expansion, countless women passed through the same cycle. Born free, captured, violated, enslaved, erased. Their lives reduced to figures in military reports, numbers in commercial inventories, footnotes in history books most people never open. But every statistic was a complete human life. A girl with a name, with parents, with hopes. A woman who loved and was loved. A full human being, reduced to an object by men who believed victory granted them that right. This was not a single night of uncontrolled rage. It was methodical, repeated, normalized. It was not a failure of civilization. It was civilization functioning exactly as designed. As one anthropologist would later argue, war is not the breakdown of order. It is its foundation. Every state is born from the ability to organize violence on an industrial scale. Rome proves the argument, because these horrors were not produced by chaos. They were produced by perfect order. The machine operated smoothly. Soldiers did their duty. Merchants conducted business. Citizens frequented licensed establishments and paid their taxes. Everything was legal. Everything was justified. Everything was considered natural. How many modern systems speak in the same language? How many present-day cruelties are defended by necessity, by security, by order? The weeping of millions of women whose names were never carved into stone still lingers beneath the ruins. They built Rome as much as its engineers and generals did. They built it with their bodies, with their lives, with everything they were and everything they might have been. A poet once wrote that the people of the past were no worse than us. They simply did not know what we would later discover. But did they truly not know? Or did they know perfectly well and simply choose not to care? The records existed. The documents survived. Anyone who wanted to know could know. The Romans themselves documented everything with meticulous bureaucracy. The issue was never ignorance, it was complicity. And when we choose today to celebrate Rome's greatness without acknowledging its foundations of suffering, when we teach young people about the glory of the legions without explaining what followed victory, When we watch stories of emperors and gladiators and conveniently forget the rest, do we not become complicit as well? Do we not continue the silence that began 2,000 years ago? The truth is uncomfortable. We prefer comforting myths to disturbing realities. We prefer simple heroes to the recognition that almost all human greatness is purchased at an obscene price. We prefer to believe that those times were different, that we have progressed, that we would never do the same. But we do, in different forms, under different justifications, in different places. Sexual exploitation in war zones did not end with Rome. The conversion of human beings into marketable objects did not end with Rome. Systematic violence against the defeated, the displaced, the refugee did not end with Rome. It only changed its language. And as long as we look to the past only to admire its achievements, while refusing to confront its horrors, as long as we learn from history only the lessons that allow us to feel good about ourselves, not as a warning we heed, but as a prophecy we insist on fulfilling. So ask yourself, have these horrors truly remained in the past, or have we simply learned to hide them better, to justify them with more sophisticated words, to embed them in systems so complex that we no longer have to look directly at what we do? Is the difference between us and the Romans moral, or merely technological? And when you close your eyes at night, when the world grows quiet and only your conscience remains, can you hear the echo? Or have you learned, like generations before you, to turn screams into whispers so faint they sound like part of the wind? Power, in every era, finds a way to sanctify its own sin. The final question is simple. Will you continue kneeling at that altar